What I'd like to have right now is for all you loyal, awesome, devastatingly attractive retro game enthusiasts to hit that subscribe button while I show you what a real game review looks like. Now hit my music. Background viewing. Hey, check out the Aging Gamers coverage of this title. Link in the description below. Basics. WWF WrestleMania Challenge was released for the NES in 1990, published by LJN. But before you toss it into the digital dumpster fire on Reflex, hold up. It was actually developed by Rare. Yes, that Rare. This was years before Donkey Kong Country, sure, but clearly they had some chops, even in their pre-Masterpiece era. I mean, any developer who can make a wrestler move diagonally in 8-bit probably deserves at least a handshake. It's a wrestling game. Shocker, I know. For 1 or 2 players. You can tag in a friend for co-op or throw down against a rival in versus mode. For the time and platform, it offered a surprisingly robust lineup of match types. Standard singles, tag team bouts, 3-on-3 Survivor Series style elimination matches, and even a tournament mode. Not bad for 8-bit grappling. Overview. This game came with a surprisingly thorough manual. Game pack instructions. And yes, I still have my original copy from back in the day. I sold my NES and most of my games to Funko Land around 1992. Remember them? But somehow this manual, and one other, didn't make the trip. I was bummed out about missing out on an extra $1.50 back then, but today, totally worth it, because now we can flip through it together. It's got everything. A dramatic little intro, match prep, character selection, game modes, strategy tips, a performance chart, and even an ad to subscribe to WWF Magazine. This thing pulls no punches. The performance chart is especially helpful. Movesets vary quite a bit between wrestlers, with different effects based on whether you're tapping or holding the button, standing in front of or behind your opponent, whether they're down, or if you're going for a corner post move. It's way more dynamic than you'd expect from an NES wrestling game. There's also a mini bio for each wrestler, followed by full move pages dedicated to each one. It's not new info, just a more readable format, so you don't misread Boss Man Headbutt for Rick Rude Face Smash. Then come 6 trivia questions, which of course, I aced. FCC warnings, the classic "don't use projection TVs" message, and on the back, an ad for a game I just might need to review sometime. Manuals like this were a gold standard back then, and revisiting it honestly reminded me of how much they added to the whole experience. Thumbing through this manual again brought back a flood of memories, not just of the game, but of how I used to play it. So let's step into the ring and see how it held up then, and holds up now. My youthful experience. My interest in professional wrestling waxed and waned over the years. As a very young kid, I'd occasionally watch AWA on weekend morning. It was the local promotion where I lived, and I found it pretty captivating. I was into it just enough that my dad built me a wrestling ring out of plywood, wooden dowels, and twine. I held matches in it using my He-Man toys as stand-ins for the stars of the squared circle. But over time, other interests took over. Notably baseball and astronomy, and wrestling quietly faded into the background. Las Vegas, Nevada, Thomas and Mack Center, March 26th, 1991. While visiting my family over spring break, we attended a WWF television taping, just days after WrestleMania 7. That night didn't just rekindle my fascination with wrestling, it super kicked it back into my life and pinned it for the 3 count. I went all in. Weekly syndicated shows, WWF magazine subscriptions, action figures, the works. And naturally, I had to own WWF WrestleMania Challenge for the NES. I found it fun. I already had a connection with many of the in-game wrestlers, even though some had moved on from the organization by that time I got the cartridge. The game was challenging. The move variety was impressive for the era, some even unique to each wrestler, and it featured surprisingly decent chiptune renditions of their entrance themes. To the 11-year-old me, it was everything I wanted in a wrestling game. The look. Fire up WWF WrestleMania Challenge, and after the standard legal mumbo-jumbo, you're greeted by a genuinely impressive splash screen. The Ultimate Warrior, WWF Championship belt around his waist, is front and center, flexing in full pixelated glory beneath the game's towering title. It's a strong first impression, and one that instantly tells you this isn't just another generic grappler. This is the World Wrestling Federation. The menu screens carry that same energy. Red, white, and blue star-spangled borders frame each option against a jet black background. It's loud, proud, and unmistakably on brand for early 90s wrestling. When you scroll through the roster to choose your wrestler, you get a tight close-up of each face. The pixel art is surprisingly good. Warrior, Macho, Hogan, all instantly recognizable. Unless you're too young to know what a hacksaw Jim Duggan even is. Once the bell rings, the action takes place from a roughly 3/4 overhead isometric style view. It's an unusual angle for NES wrestling games, but it works. The ring has depth, and there's a sense of being above the action, as if you're watching from a TV crane cam. Graphically, the wrestlers look solid. Blocky, sure, but their gear and colors make them stand out. Macho Man has his shades. Ooh, Macho King. We have to be time correct here. Big Boss Man has his blue uniform, and Brutus Beefcake has those tights. It's all here. The arena itself is no slouch. The ring apron cleverly incorporates your wrestler's power meter, which is a great bit of visual design, foregoing an obnoxious and space-hogging heads-up display. You've got ring stairs, animated crowds behind a steel barricade, and ring posts that mostly get the job done. Turnbuckles? Kind of a slightly scattershot affair. They're visible on the side posts, hidden at the bottom, and mysteriously absent up top. Like the art budget on this game ended abruptly. All in all, WrestleMania Challenge looks like a TV taping of WWF Superstars or WWF Wrestling Challenge. The ring, the crowd, the graphics, it nails that vibe. But instead of squashing Barry Horowitz or Steve Lombardi in the opener, every match is a main eventer clash. And yes, that includes the era-appropriate yourself. A blank slate wrestler who somehow walks in with all the charisma and crowd support of a top-tier babyface. He's over. Don't question it. The sound. The sound? Not too shabby. The title screen and menu selection areas have a nice ambient vibe. They set the mood better than you'd expect for an early wrestling title. Sound effects? Better than tolerable, totally acceptable, and occasionally flirt with actual believability. You even get 8-bit renditions of each wrestler's entrance music playing during matches. Now, I'll admit, I didn't recognize Andre's theme, assuming he even had one. This is where the comments section will either back me up or school me. Some of these tracks are a bit crude, sure, but several hold up surprisingly well, and most of them, at least the ones etched in my memory, are absolutely recognizable. Except for yourself. His theme sounds like whatever tune plays when you walk into a mall, with no cash and a broken wristwatch. Catchy, but deeply anonymous. Editor's note, nobody uses cash, wristwatches, or goes to the mall anymore. Gameplay. Pretty intuitive, especially if you took a moment to read the manual with me earlier. The D-pad moves your wrestler around the ring. Action buttons handle your attacks. Select lets you tag out, when applicable, and start pauses the action, with a hold indicator appearing at the top center when you do. The camera angle can make movement feel a bit awkward at first, but you'll get used to it quickly enough. Early on, you might struggle as you figure out reliable tactics against the CPU. But once you crack the code, the difficulty drops to almost zero, which is a little disappointing. But hey, that's true for many games. The downside, replay value suffers once you've mastered tournament mode and are able to take home the championship every time. Plus, the game does a number on your hands. 10 minutes in, and I'm feeling some serious discomfort and outright pain after longer sessions. I don't remember that being an issue when I was 11, so older gamers, consider this your friendly warning. That said, I like the gameplay overall. The dynamic movesets, with variations depending on timing, positioning, and wrestler-specific specialties, all thoroughly detailed in the manual, give it a well-rounded, authentic feel. My main complaints are that the winning strategy is a bit formulaic, and the game is surprisingly hard on the hands. Other. One funny quirk. Almost every wrestler can hit a leg drop, except Hulk Hogan. Because, of course, Hogan's never done a leg drop in his life. Okay, fair enough. Also, it seems like anyone can body slam Andre the Giant. That legendary mystique? Yeah, it looks like it's gone out the window here. But here's the kicker. I could never manage to give Andre a rude awakening. Too tall? Too elusive? Maybe some moves you just can't connect on certain opponents. There may be more mysteries hidden in this game than I realized. If you uncover any, drop them in the comments. And the tournament mode? It's less a rigid bracket and more like a DMV line. Slow, steady, and you're just hoping to get to the front without losing your mind. You must defeat all characters, one after another. Think of it like climbing up the ladder in Mortal Kombat rather than facing the winner of the other semifinal bout. The one-player experience. Actually, everything I've discussed up to this point has been from the one-player experience. It's the two-player modes that need a little spotlight here. Unfortunately, these days it's rare for me to have a player 2 handy, so I'm leaning on childhood memories and a bit of speculation. With the replay value tied closely to your learning curve, the two-player modes definitely breathe new life into the game. Beating the CPU the same way every time gets old fast. But throw in a human opponent, or partner, into the mix, and things get a lot more unpredictable. It's not just more engaging gameplay, it's social fun. And that's a win in almost any game. Just make sure both players are at least somewhat evenly matched. If one person dominates every round, things get stale again. Only this time, your buddy won't want to keep playing with you. And suddenly, player 2 has left the ring. Who would enjoy this? Obviously, anyone who played this back in the day is going to feel the warm glow of nostalgia. That's true for nearly any title I cover. But who else might appreciate WWF WrestleMania Challenge? That's a little harder to pin down. Wrestling fans from the era will likely enjoy the lineup of superstars, the recognizable entrance themes, and the patriotic red, white, and blue ropes. Wrestling gameplay has come a long way since 1990. Even the jump to 16-bit brought major strides in how grappling and signature moves were handled. But for a 2-button NES controller, this one holds up surprisingly well. I can picture an old-school wrestling fan from the 90s dusting off the NES, calling their kid over, popping this game in, and sharing some pixelated sports entertainment. Maybe there's a Coke in the parents' hand, a Pepsi in the kids', and together they're beating the snot out of each other on a lazy Sunday afternoon. Just like the good old days. Legacy. Professional wrestling has always found a way to survive. Styles shift, audiences change, but the spectacle, the drama, the personalities, the pop of the crowd remains. It's still here decades later. Maybe a little different, maybe a little more polished, but still here. WWF WrestleMania Challenge, though, this one belongs in the past. It didn't revolutionize the genre or set any long-term standards. Its most notable contribution, dynamic wrestler-specific movesets, was impressive in its day, but quickly became commonplace. In the grand story of wrestling games, it's a side note. But for some of us, it's more than that. This cartridge, these sprites, those crude 8-bit renditions of entrance themes, they're tied to memories, to afternoons in front of a tube television, to magazines and action figures, to friends and brothers and cousins who don't sit cross-legged on the carpet with us anymore, and to wrestlers, larger than life, who now only exist in grainy promos and quiet tributes. Time moves forward, roster pages become obituaries, childhood heroes fade. We play on, remembering. And maybe that's what gives this game its last bit of relevance. Not in what it did for the genre, but in what it preserved for the fans who were there. None of us are immortal. Except, of course, the Hulkster. Overall, WWF WrestleMania Challenge delivers some solid moments. The look captures the era with impressive pixel art and smart user interface choices. The sound is a mixed success. Recognizable themes, decent effects, and some true 8-bit charm. Gameplay is intuitive and dynamic at first, though ultimately formulaic and a bit rough on the hands. This game is good in short bursts, but in the wide landscape of wrestling titles out there, spanning decades and multiple console generations, it's hard to give this one a glowing recommendation. If you played it in the past, you probably already know where your feelings lie. If you didn't, well, it's not an easy sell. Wrestling games are plentiful, and most new players are more likely to discover titles that are faster, deeper, or simply more fun by modern standards. That said, it is good for its time, and good for those of us who still carry a bit of nostalgia in our hearts. For the rest of the world, though, WrestleMania Challenge is a game they'll probably never even hear about, and they won't miss much by skipping it. That truth stings a little, but the gaming world marches on, as it should. We can embrace the past, and that's one of the reasons I do all these reviews. But we also have to live in the now. Appreciate what was, enjoy what is, and maybe, once in a while, fire this one back up, just for the memories. Next. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you next mission. Forget your automatic transmission because it's time to stick shift, shoulder button shift our way into Top Gear. Background viewing. Retrovania has an excellent review of this game. Link in the review of Top Gear. Basics. Top Gear is a behind-the-driver POV racing game for 1 or 2 players, simultaneous, using a split screen, whether you have a second human or not. Published by Kemco and developed by Gremlin Graphics, it hit the SNES in 1992 and was pretty well received. By me, and a few of my friends. More professional critics mostly agreed it was a pretty good game. Overview. Top Gear sort of has a Street Fighter 2 feel to it, traveling around the world, competing in various circuits, and advancing to the next continent. Okay, so that specific format detail reminds me of Street Fighter 2. The actual gameplay, quite different. 999, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to compare and contrast a fighting game with a racing game. Mission rejected. As with most racers, your goal is to blast around the track with speed, with precision, and most importantly,
with style, Petit, with style.
The options menu is relatively robust. Not by today's standards, but it definitely outclasses some even more famous SNES racers. You can adjust the number of players. You can toggle this with the D-pad. Selecting it will allow you to enter your name and select between automatic or manual transmission. There is no reason for any respectable human being to select the former. Seriously, the gaming gods will curse you and every controller you hold for the rest of your life if you play this game with automatic transmission. The list of victims to support this anecdotal claim is numerous, although they all conveniently vanished, as all good conspiracy theories cover their tracks very well. Before the rubber meets the road, you'll choose from a few preset controller layouts and select your car. Each has its own balance of top speed, acceleration, tire grip, and fuel consumption. So once you're familiar with the game, you can pick based off of what offsets your weaknesses, or leans into them if you're feeling bold. Skill level needs no explanation for my intelligent viewer. Viewers, now. Thanks for the latest subscription. Country. Most are locked at first, but you can earn passwords or just cheat and look them up. Speed units, miles per hour, kilometers per hour, depending on whether you prefer your numbers big or small. I mean, honestly, it's just a nice little international touch. And finally, the thrilling option, play game. Selecting this exits the menu. Shocker. My youthful experience. This was a rental, and then another rental, and another. It was good enough to rent repeatedly, but never quite good enough to fork over my precious 12-year-old dollars. I was 12-year-old, not my dollars. Is that obvious? I'm gonna leave it in there. I already owned Super Mario Kart and had my eyes locked on F-Zero. Another racing game felt like a luxury purchase. Top Gear just didn't quite make the final cut. Still, it stayed in that bizarre middle ground. I liked it enough to keep coming back, but not enough to bring it home for good. In fact, as far as I can remember, it's one of only 2 games to ever hold that distinction. Look. It looks great, said Evad about every SNES game he has ever reviewed. And the trend continues. It has the style of a late 80s arcade racer, though don't ask me which ones exactly. And it just works. Landscape, cities, and terrain feel modern by 1992 standards. Maybe even a little postmodern on some tracks. It's like living in the not-so-distant future. Visuals are important in behind-the-driver racing games. I mean, you're staring at the taillights the whole time after all. And Top Gear delivers. The tracks feel fresh thanks to varied settings and little touches like roadside lampposts that fly by and amplify the sense of speed. And yes, it looks great. Did I mention it looks great? Sound. It's no secret that my favorite gaming soundtracks come from the SNES. Yeah, at least when it comes to cartridge-based music. In this game, no exception. Turns out many of these bangers are remixes of tracks from the Lotus games on the Amiga. News to me, since the Amiga was a giant blind spot in my gaming knowledge for years. Regardless, the music here is fantastic. Sound effects are solid too. Revving engines, satisfying crashes, and a lot of squelching tires. Maybe too much tire noise if you're really paying attention. But you won't be. You'll be too busy jamming to the tunes. Gameplay. As with any game, especially a racing one, there is an acclimation period. But most of the controls are quite straightforward, especially if you just glance at the screen when you select your control type. It's fair enough in maneuverability and does a great job of making the controls feel intuitive. CPU racers can get aggressive, and learning the maps, like with all racing games, is something that'll take a little time. Fuel management is critical. Some races are short and it won't matter, but many races are longer, and you'll need to hit the pit stops. It can be tough to find them if it's your first time on the track. The game does notify you when you're low on fuel, which side the pits will appear on as you approach them, but familiarity with the track makes this transition much more seamless. As you progress, it will become increasingly more important to have the guile to know just how long to spend in the pits. Remember the recharge sections in F-Zero? It's a lot like that, only much more strategy. Much more strategy is involved in your refueling here. You do not want to run out of fuel. You just idle like a bonehead while everybody else laps you. But you also don't want to spend so long in the pits that you can't finish at least top 5. 6th or worse, you cannot progress. And I guess I'm okay with that feature. Pretty common for the era. Heck, F-Zero had a lap-by-lap requirement, and Super Mario Kart required a top 4 finish. And those are two of my favorite racing games of all time. Although both of those allowed you, if you had enough lives, to retry that specific race. But in and of itself, the ranking requirement is not intrinsically bad. But it can become a struggle to familiarize yourself with the later tracks in a circuit if you have to beat the first few tracks again just to give it a second shot. But my biggest criticism is the hills. It gets better, again, if you know what lies ahead. But the first few times racing on a track with lots of hills, you find your limited visibility in these sections is a frustrating disadvantage. If we go all the way back to my F-Zero review from Season 1, I question whether all the flat tracks was a good feature or not. Well, Top Gear tried it, and while it does look and feel cool, it creates a layer of difficulty not common or even necessary in racing games. They do provide a unique touch, though, and would not be the same without them. The box art is incredible. Like Kit from Knight Rider got a Batmobile makeover and just finished drag racing in Tron. It screams speed, style, and the kind of high-octane cool that gets turned into a lunchbox. Or an airbrushed mural. And then you boot up the game and pick from 4 cars that look fine. Serviceable. Like they were designed by someone who once saw a Ferrari in a magazine, had to draw it from memory, using only a ruler. It's like being promised a sleek, classy Matchbox car and getting Hot Wheels instead. And not even the cool kind with a skull grill or a giant spoiler. Just the one shaped like a microwave for some reason. At least the interface isn't out to ruin your day. The menus are straightforward. The font doesn't look like a ransom note. And best of all, the password system uses real words. It's not a randomized jumble like Z7PLQK, but actual readable, pronounceable terms. It's like the game trusted kids to be human beings instead of CAPTCHA decoders. Imagine that. No confusing messes of 8s and Bs, Zs and 7s that make you question your handwriting and your will to continue. It's a small thing. But in the 90s, a miracle. The one-player experience. Top Gear holds up great in solo play. It's definitely better with a second player, but even with the constant split screen, yes, even in one-player mode, it's easy to get used to because the gameplay is just that good. Who would like this? Me? I mean, I love good racing games, and this is a good racing game. If you're in the same boat, I don't see any reason why you won't like it too. If you don't like racers or behind the driver perspective, you probably already know you won't give it a shot. For those in the middle, those who are okay with racing games, it's a tough call. You'll probably prefer Super Mario Kart or F-Zero. No shame, I do too. But Top Gear still deserves a spin. So for the casual racing fan, I think that can only be determined on an individual basis. Legacy. Outside of South America, Top Gear's legacy is kind of limited. But in Brazil, borders on legendary. The passion for this game there is unreal. If you ever stumble into a South American streamer playing Top Gear on Twitch, buckle up. Even if you're like me and foreign languages are exotic and impossible, enthusiasm speaks every language. Overall, Top Gear is great. Its biggest flaw is simply being stuck in the shadows of titans like F-Zero and Super Mario Kart. On the same console, no less. I don't rank games in these reviews, reasons I may explain in the future. But let's just say, it may not be gold or silver, but a bronze medal in this lineup is nothing to be ashamed of. And even being in the conversation is a testament to how much fun it is. Next. The fiery debate in the comments about Matchbox versus Hot Wheels is good. But next episode, things get competitive and blocky and probably a little awkward. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you next mission. Some games want to test your reflexes. Others test your patience. But Bubble Bobble? It just wants you to have fun. And maybe hum its theme song in your sleep. Forever. You're a tiny, bubble-blowing dinosaur on a quest to save your girlfriend from the clutches of some seriously weird bad guys. And along the way, you'll pop enemies, collect candy, and bounce around to one of the catchiest tunes in video game history. It's bright, it's bubbly, and it's the kind of game that makes you smile, even when things get tricky. With infinite continues and a cheerful vibe that never quits, it's hard to stay mad at Bubble Bobble, even when the little ghost thing swoops in and steals your last life. As always, I got a link in the description for some background viewing. Go check out that creator. Give him a like, follow, subscribe, comment, love, whatever. You know the drill. And we're just going to flow right into the basics here. Bubble Bobble hit the NES in 1988, bringing home the arcade charm of Taito's 1986 coin-op classic. You play as Plop Plop, or Fizz Fizz if you're playing two-player, two friends who turned into bubble dragons. Why? Magic, probably. The goal? Clear 100 single-screen stages by trapping enemies in bubbles and then popping them, ideally with a satisfying chain reaction and a shower of fruit. The NES version trims a few arcade features but stays impressively faithful overall. It supports two players, simultaneous, has unlimited continues, yes, and keeps the action bouncing with bright visuals and that one song you'll still be hearing long after you turn off the system. Overview. Bubble Bobble is a wonderfully weird cocktail of action, strategy, and sugary chaos. At a glance, it looks like a single-screen platformer, but it plays more like a tactical arcade challenge with just a splash of 2D shooter sensibility. Each of the 100 stages is a self-contained puzzle box filled with enemies, oddly shaped platforms, and the question, how do I clear this as effectively and stylishly as possible? You don't defeat enemies by jumping on them or zapping them directly. Instead, you trap them in bubbles, slow, floaty projectiles, and then pop those bubbles by making contact, sending enemies flying in every direction as loot explodes across the screen. There's a bit of Mario Bros. In its genetic blueprint. Both games ask you to disable enemies before taking them out. But Bubble Bobble remixes that idea with whimsical physics and combo potential. Chain multiple enemies in one pop and you're rewarded with bigger points, better items, and the sheer joy of a well-timed sweep. The bubbles themselves feel unpredictable at first, drifting and bobbing in strange ways. But stick with it, and you'll realize each room has its own airflow pattern. Learn it, and those bubbles start to behave less like chaos and more like clockwork. It's the blend of cheerful disorder and hidden structure that gives the game its charm and surprising depth. My youthful experience. I only played Bubble Bobble once as a kid, but wow, what a memory. My cousin and I dove into the NES version one day and just didn't stop. We played co-op for what felt like hours, hypnotized by the music, the colors, and the sheer fun of it all. I have no idea how far we got, but I remember it feeling like an epic journey. Just the two of us, side by side, clearing screen after screen with bubble-based teamwork. And then, I never touched it again. For decades. That one magical session was all I had. A single bright snapshot from my gaming youth that stuck with me far more than some games I've played dozens of times. Revisiting it as an adult, I expected some warm fuzzies, but I also got my bubble popped pretty quickly. I was surprisingly bad upon my return. Was younger me actually better at video games? After a bit of time, I found my rhythm again. Before long, I was clearing stages like it was 1989 all over again. Turns out, some games just stay with you, even if you only play them once. The look. When you first power on Bubble Bobble, you're greeted by a bright, cheerful title screen that sets the tone for what's to come. The game uses a simple but effective visual style, colorful platforms and characters set against a black, solid background. To modernize, that backdrop might seem limited, even outdated, but it serves a clear purpose. It keeps the screen uncluttered, makes all the moving elements pop visually, and ensures that gameplay remains easy to read, even when the action gets chaotic. In a game that can fill up with bubbles, enemies, projectiles, and bonus items all at once, that kind of clarity is a strength, not a shortcoming. The sprite work is classic NES craftsmanship, clean, expressive, and thoughtfully animated. Plop Plop and Fizz Fizz, your heroic bubble dragons, are instantly recognizable and oddly charming, with their stubby legs and endless supply of bubble breath. The enemy designs don't always resemble specific real-world animals, but each sprite is unique enough to be quickly identified in the middle of a fast-paced stage. That matters, because every enemy type behaves differently, and knowing who's who can be the difference between popping bubbles and getting popped yourself. Like many NES games, Bubble Bobble runs into some flickering when too many sprites appear on the same horizontal line. It's noticeable, but not that distracting, and rarely affects gameplay. Even the more dangerous enemies never vanish long enough to cause a cheap hit. Given how busy the screen can get, the game handles the NES's hardware limitations admirably. The sound. That vivid title screen isn't just a visual treat. It comes with a whimsical little jingle that sounds like something magical is about to happen. It's short, it's sweet, and sets the stage for adventure. Then you start the game and the main theme kicks in. It builds with a sense of momentum, then drops into a cheerful, upbeat melody that perfectly matches the game's bubbly tone. It's catchy, it's light, and thankfully, it's pleasant. Because you're gonna hear it a lot. The music loop is fairly short, and given how easy it is to get hooked on Bubble Bobble, there's a strong chance you'll be humming that loop well after you turn the game off. Whether that's charming or grating depends on the listener, but personally, I haven't hit the point where I have to hit the mute button just yet. So it holds up. And just when you think the music is all sunshine and smiles, the game throws a little curveball. If you dawdle too long on a stage, the cheerful theme cuts out and is replaced by a short, eerie warning jingle. It's your cue. Something nasty's coming. And sure enough, Baron von Blubber shows up seconds later. It's a perfect audio signal. Tense, unmistakable, and just spooky enough to make you scramble like your life depends on it. For double plop and double fizz, it is. The sound effects are solid. Jumping, bubbling, and grabbing goodies all have a squeaky, toy-like quality, satisfying in a way that fits the game's tone. When you pop a bubble-trapped enemy, you get a little musical burst. It's hard to classify. It has more personality than a standard sound effect, but it's too short to call a full-on fanfare. Whatever it is, it works. It makes defeating enemies feel like a reward without breaking the rhythm of the action. Would a little more musical variety help the experience? Yeah, sure. A longer loop or an alternate stage theme wouldn't hurt, but that's less a complaint and more of a hindsight wish list item. Because as it stands, the sound design gets the job done with its charm and consistency. Gameplay. Left, right, jump, shoot. And pause. Bubble Bobble gives you just a handful of player-controlled actions, but squeezes a whole lot of fun and challenge out of them. The early stages are simple and inviting, easing you into the mechanics. But as you climb deeper into the 100-room Tower of Trouble, layouts get trickier. Enemy spam grows wilder, and the screen starts to feel more like a bouncy obstacle course than a static level. It's a difficulty curve, but it's one that climbs with you, not over you. You learn by doing here. With the exception of one key trick, this is a game you can figure out as you go. So here's the one thing I will spoil. When you land on a bubble, hold the jump button if you want to bounce off of it. Tapping is possible, but if you try to time your jump like it's a springboard, you'll most likely just pop the bubble and fall right through. This becomes crucial if you find yourself at the bottom of a tall shaft. If you didn't know it, now you do. And if you did, congrats. You've already got your Bubble Bobble Black Belt. Everything else? Go discover it. The lightning bolts, the firepower items, the strange power-ups with mysterious effects. Part of the fun is figuring them out for yourself. And if you mess up, you probably will. It's part of the charm. I hinted at this earlier, but there's even an anti-idling mechanic built in. Spend too long on a stage and the music takes a sinister turn. That's your cue that trouble's coming. Specifically, a ghostly white whale named Baron von Blubber, who appears out of nowhere and comes straight for you. His movements can be anticipated, but his presence is unnerving. Finish the stage before he gets you, or you're toast. This moment of pressure is rare for a game that feels so cheerful otherwise, but it works. It jolts you into action without ever tipping into cruelty. It's also worth noting how naturally playable this game is today. You don't need to read a manual, study a guide, or watch a Let's Play to enjoy it. For a game from the NES era, that's saying something. Bubble Bobble is one of those rare titles where you can just pick up the controller and start having fun. That said, the manual is loaded with all sorts of information. Back in the day, we'd study those things on the car ride home from the store. By the time we were ready to play a new game, we had those things memorized. So while you can play without any background support, which I do encourage for this title, studying the manual before or during gameplay is a way to authenticate the era-appropriate inner retro gamer inside of you, which obviously I also encourage. So, play how you wish. Good advice for any title. Other. As you delve deeper into Bubble Bobble, the rules of the world begin to shift, subtly at first, then more overtly. Semi-solid platforms, which once behaved predictably, start to defy those expectations. Some suddenly block your movements in ways you didn't anticipate. Others let you pass through when clearly they shouldn't. It's not a glitch, it's deliberate. The game asks you to throw out what you've learned about stage structure and remap things in your head. What you see isn't always what you get. You'll find yourself second-guessing every semi-solid you meet because in this game, even the floor has trust issues. And while we're talking about things beneath the surface, there might be more to the ending than meets the eye. Some cryptic clues suggest that the truest conclusion, the real ending, has some specific requirement. Let's just say I've heard whispers and fully intend to find out for myself. Me, myself, and sometimes you. The solo mode is strong, no question. It's not the kind of game where you need another player to make it worthwhile. But the co-op experience? That's where the magic really bubbles up. There's something about this one that sticks with you, like bubblegum on a hot sidewalk. It's approachable and inviting, and just chaotic enough to be memorable. My own experience was limited to a single childhood memory, but it's one I've never let go. I played Bubble Bobble with my cousin, just the two of us, and we played for hours and hours. I don't even remember how far we got, only that we got deep. We couldn't stop. It was like being handed a never-ending roll of bubble tape. Addictive, joyful, and somehow always fun. And then I hadn't played it again, not for decades. Revisiting it recently was surreal. At first I felt completely lost. Was I better at games back then? Possibly. But I found my footing. And once I did, it was like old reflexes waking up. I did surprisingly well. Maybe not the stuff of legends, but more than enough to remind me of why that one memory never faded. So, word on the street is there might be more than one ending. I hinted at this earlier. Some say you need to beat the game in two-player mode to unlock the true conclusion. In an attempt to avoid spoilers, I discontinued research on that. I intend to find out the old-fashioned way. If you spoil this in the comments, I am gonna... Okay, I won't. But I'm gonna fantasize about it. You can't see me shaking my fist. Fair enough. Who would enjoy this? Honestly, I'm struggling to think of anyone who wouldn't enjoy this game. I'm sure those people exist, statistically speaking, but I can't imagine why. This is just flat-out instant fun gaming. No need to find the fun through ironic appreciation or rose-tinted glasses. It's right there from the moment you start. Now, I'm known for digging deep to extract enjoyment from even the roughest, weirdest, most painful games, but this one, no excavation required. It's cheerful, clever, compulsively playable. Yes, it looks like a game made for kids, and maybe it was, but something about it transcends age, gender, just about every other dividing line. Whether you're 6 or 60, there's a good chance Bubble Bobble will put a smile on your face. Legacy. Bubble Bobble has seen a myriad of sequels, spin-offs, and remasters over the decades. Just when it seems like its relevance is finally fading, another port or reimagining bubbles to the surface. Few entries capture the mystique of the original for me, but every generation seems to get their own version to grow up with. Younger gamers may naturally gravitate towards the one they knew first, but this little NES port, it still holds up. It's easy to pick up, hard to put down, surprisingly timeless. Just don't start it up if you gotta be somewhere in like the next 6 hours. Overall, Bubble Bobble is cheerful, clever, and endlessly playable. The visuals are simple but effective, with bright characters that pop against the dark background. The music is catchy, upbeat, and thankfully never crosses into irritating, even after all those repeat listens. Gameplay-wise, it's tight, creative, and full of surprises, with just enough challenge to keep things interesting, without ever feeling unfair. It's a good game, plenty of fun. Whether you're diving in solo or teaming up with a friend, there's real magic here. The kind that makes hours disappear before you even realize it. I had a blast guiding Plop Plop, and occasionally Fizz Fizz, through dozens of bubble-filled stages. Wait, what? Hold on. Their names are Bub and Bob? Huh. That actually makes slightly more sense. Alright. And just for the record, no, Alka-Seltzer did not sponsor this review, though after playing this long, I might need some. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you next mission. So, who wants a part-time job where your biggest workplace hazards include aggressive canines, fire-breathing gargoyle statues, and someone launching their barbecue grill into orbit? Welcome to Paperboy 2, where delivering newspapers means dodging every weird obstacle a suburban fever dream can throw at you. Set in a neighborhood that clearly has no zoning laws, Paperboy 2 features front yard skate parks, inexplicable moats, haunted houses, and people who seem personally offended by your presence on a bicycle. It's chaotic, punishingly difficult, and let's be honest, not all that fun. But if you don't take it too seriously, the over-the-top failures can become part of the comedy. Today we're diving into the Super Nintendo version of Paperboy 2, a sequel that takes the strange charm of the original and turns the dial up, though not necessarily in the right direction. For background viewing, SNES Drunk sums it up very well. Much faster than I'm about to. Link in the description. Basics. Paperboy 2 was released for the Super Nintendo in 1991, I think. Some spurious reports I've come across say 1992, and while I don't mind doing research when the reward is rewarding, pinpoint accuracy on the release date for this specific port of this specific title, not high on my better get it right list. Developed by Tengen and published by Mindscape, it is a sequel to the arcade classic Paperboy, and it made its way to multiple platforms. Today we're focusing on the SNES version. Just like the original, your job is to deliver newspapers and avoid disaster. But this time, you can serve both sides of the street, and the hazards have doubled. In number, in weirdness, and in how quickly they make you regret choosing this as your summer job. Overview. At first glance, Paperboy 2 looks like it's delivering more of the same. Hop on your bike, toss newspapers at mailboxes, and try not to get taken out by every moving object in the neighborhood. But the sequel expands things slightly. Now you're covering both sides of the street. There are new heroic moments, like stopping crimes or saving babies, if you happen to throw a paper at exactly the right time and pixel. The action plays out from a tilted, oblique angle camera, a hallmark of the series, which gives a kind of 2.5-dimensional feel to your neighborhood route. Personally, I've always had a rough time with these kinds of views. Judging your position in space and aiming your throws just right can be trickier than it looks. Paperboy 2 isn't the worst offender in this regard, but it's definitely in the same ballpark. That said, players who are comfortable with isometric style games may not find this to be too much of an issue. Where the original Paperboy eases you in, at least a little, before the mayhem ramps up, Paperboy 2 is brutal from the first few feet of sidewalk. You'll barely start pedaling before something tries to trip you, squash you, or knock you off your bike. There's no warm-up lap here. It just drops you into the madness and dares you to keep up. In theory, it's a bigger, better Paperboy. In practice, it's mostly just harder and weirder. The controls feel stiff, the obstacles are relentless, and the line between success and failure is often hilariously thin. If the original Paperboy was quirky and challenging, Paperboy 2 is that, but with the difficulty cranked up and the charm stretched a little thin. My youthful experience. Back in the day, I played the NES version of the original Paperboy and had a good time with it. It was weird, sure, but it had a certain rhythm. Chucking papers, dodging dogs, swerving around breakdancers. And once you settled into it, the challenge felt fair enough to keep coming back. I never played Paperboy 2 as a kid, and maybe that was for the best. I did briefly consider getting a real paper route at one point, but if I had played this version first, that thought probably would have evaporated faster than my character wiping out on a fire hydrant. Between the swerving cars, flying tires, and general suburban mayhem, this game makes paper delivery look more dangerous than a neighborhood-sized Rube Goldberg machine of doom. Coming to it for the first time as an adult definitely changes the lens. I don't have nostalgia to fall back on, just the raw gameplay, which doesn't exactly roll out the welcome mat. If anything, it grabs the welcome mat, sets it on fire, and then runs you over with a remote-controlled car. The look. Visually, Paperboy 2 holds its own. It may not be a graphical showcase for the SNES, but it does a solid job of presenting the chaos clearly. Sprites are clean and recognizable. Some of them even look great, and the animation, while a bit stiff, gets the job done. The Paperboy, or Paper Girl, is expressive enough, and the various neighborhood oddities are easy to identify, even if they're trying to end your career. The backgrounds mostly sit in the range of acceptable to slightly above average. They don't dazzle, but they support the action well enough without getting in the way. It doesn't have the jaw-dropping detail or wow factor of some Super Nintendo heavy hitters, but it never looks bad either. Overall, the sprite work is to my liking, and the game's visual style fits the strange tone it's going for. You won't pause the action just to admire the scenery, but at least you'll see what's hitting you. Just not before it's too late. Sound. The sound design in Paperboy 2 is a bit of a mixed bag. The sound effects, pretty solid. You get a nice variety of clangs, crashes, and thuds that do a good job selling the suburban chaos. Things like breaking windows, mailbox hits, and unfortunate wipeouts all have a satisfying audio punch. They're not pushing the SNES hardware or anything, but they're effective. And I always appreciate it when game sounds resemble their real-world counterparts, without being overly cartoony. The background music, though, is kind of a letdown. It's not bad exactly, just oddly forgettable and strangely out of place. It has the vibe of a placeholder track that was supposed to be replaced with something more dynamic, but never was. There's a weird disconnect between the high-stakes absurdity on screen and the relatively tame music playing behind it. You'd think a game this chaotic would call for something a little more energetic or memorable. All in all, the sound effects carry their weight, but the music feels like it wandered in from a completely different game. Gameplay. On the surface, the controls in Paperboy 2 are fairly straightforward. The D-pad lets you move up, down, left, and right, which translates to speeding up, slowing down, or veering side to side along your route. It actually maps to the isometric perspective reasonably well. Throwing papers is split between the left and right sides. LB or Y throws left, RA or X throws right. In other words, this game gives you an entire SNES controller for what is essentially a two-button arcade concept. Hey, it works. The real challenge isn't in how you control the game, it's in how everything else behaves. The neighborhood wants you gone. Not just gone, but obliterated. Not just now, 10 seconds ago. It's the madness of the original cranked up to 11. No dog is friendly, no baby is approachable, no gutter is without a groping green grabby hand. Flame-throwing gargoyles, haunted houses, and even cannons break up the peace and monotony of suburban living. It's like the entire town had a meeting and unanimously voted to end your shift early and painfully. Many of the obstacles fall into that classic surprise, too late category. Hazards that come screaming onto the screen with zero warning. You'll often be punished for things you couldn't possibly react to in time, especially on a first attempt. It's a frustrating style of gameplay that hasn't aged well. Back in the day, though, this wasn't uncommon. Whether it was the limitations of the 4:3 aspect ratio or just the lingering influence of arcade, quarter munchers, off-screen threats were a part of the package. Paperboy 2 brings a lot of them. The difficulty is brutal right from the jump. This game is gleefully unforgiving, like it's daring you to take it seriously just so it can laugh at you. And honestly, that might be where the fun is. If you can mentally reframe your mission from delivering papers efficiently to barely surviving an obstacle course designed by your cartoonishly angry neighbors, there's amusement to be found in the madness. Sometimes you just have to bow to the absurd. Other. And oh, how absurd it is! If you thought the gameplay was chaotic, wait until you really start noticing what's happening in this neighborhood. This game doesn't just throw hazards at you, it constructs an entire Rube Goldberg suburb of doom. Dangers include cars, zombie-esque jaywalkers, ghosts, storm drains, dude tossing a baseball across the street, another dude bowling with tires across the street, armed burglaries, inexplicable car crashers, and dogs that behave like they've been genetically engineered for speed. You're not just delivering newspapers, you're skimming the edge of the apocalypse. It almost feels like Paperboy 2 is the licensed tie-in to a horror movie. The kind that would have appeared on the NES or Genesis, cashing out on whatever B-tier slasher was in theaters that month. But the movie doesn't exist. Yet. Hey, Hollywood! Your next summer slasher? Paperboy 2? Just imagine the trailer. Just when you thought it was safe to ride a bike. There's also an end-of-level stunt track where you're momentarily allowed to channel your inner BMX daredevil and rack up some bonus points. It's a nice touch, albeit one that feels like it's been grafted in from a more normal game. All told, Paperboy 2 is less a depiction of suburban Americana and more of a fever dream set to the rustling newsprint and sound of your own impending doom. Whether you read it as satire, horror, or just someone's idea of a weird joke, one thing is clear: it's committed to the bit. The one-player experience. There is no experience here, only misery. Okay, that's an exaggeration. Technically, yes, this is a playable video game. But for most players, the solo experience of Paperboy 2 is less about delivering newspapers and more about enduring wave after wave of slapstick punishment from a town seemingly cursed by ancient newsprint deities. Adding a second player might sound like a good way to dull the pain. After all, misery loves company, right? Then you read the manual. Players alternate turns, but they're both stuck on the same day. As in, no one advances to the next day until both players do. The idea is to keep progress synchronized. One player doesn't speed ahead into Wednesday while the other is still trapped in the endless Monday loop. A noble thought in theory. In practice, it means you're chained to your partner's skill level. Or lack thereof. What? Why? Since no one in the history of ever is likely to complete day one casually, the whole two-player setup feels less like a shared adventure and more like a tag-team descent into madness. It's just trading off turns between game overs while neither of you make progress. And yes, there are full playthroughs of this game online. Some brave souls finished Paperboy 2. And I cannot, in good conscience, disrespect that kind of dedication. That's the kind of mental fortitude you don't teach. You either have it or you don't. As for who would actually enjoy this game, clips the ever-loving coupons out of me. Legacy. Paperboy 2 saw a wide release with ports on numerous consoles, but from what I've heard, few versions are quite as punishing as the SNES port. It's a tough ride, in more ways than one. Still, it's the original Paperboy that tends to resurface in retro collections and compilations. That's the game that had the novelty, the arcade roots, and just enough charm to keep its memory alive. Paperboy 2? Not so much. And yet, while it's largely unremarkable in gameplay, it remains utterly unforgettable in its sheer, unforgettable unfiltered absurdity. It's like someone stitched together a neighborhood from half-remembered childhood anxieties and dared you to bike through it. A pixelated parade of nonsense. A suburb designed by a committee of chaos gremlins. The game may not have left a major legacy, but its brand of off-the-rails weirdness, that's hard to unsee. Overall, Paperboy 2 is the kind of game that dares you to laugh through the pain. The controls are manageable, the visuals are solid, and the sound effects are pretty decent. But none of that softens the blow of a neighborhood that seems actively hostile to your existence. From its isometric trickery to its endless gotcha-style obstacles, it's less a game and more a test of how long you can endure the chaos before giving into it. And yet, buried under all that frustration is a strange charm. The kind that makes you shake your head, sigh, and say, sure, why not have a tornado steal my bike? It's not a good game by most standards, but it is an unforgettable. And sometimes, that's its own kind of legacy. Paperboy 2, an exciting place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there. Next. To be announced. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you next mission. And yet, while it's largely unremarkable in gameplay, it remains utterly unforgivable.